want to really dive into some very, very specific sort of detailed questions that you may have during COVID. Some of this we've sort of already ironed out now that more time has passed and we kind of see how it's going to work during this time. But the first area that I wanted to address is talking about the stimulus payments from the federal government and any sort of tax questions that you may have with some of the changes that have been happening to the tax deadline. What does that mean for my payments? If I owe the government, what does that mean in terms of an extension? Can I still get an extension? Is there going to be another stimulus payment if this thing keeps going? What is that all going to look like? So I've started with some initial questions here that we'll sort of address, but I want to just take a step or two backwards and just review real quickly. By now, I'm hoping that everybody on this presentation has gotten their stimulus payments. So you should have gotten it in some way, shape, or form by now, whether it was a check through the mail, whether it was direct deposit because the IRS had your information from previous year's tax returns, whether you got it on a debit card, almost like an EBT card. They were sending them out that way. Hopefully you should have gotten that payment. If you were an adult making up to $75,000 as a single individual taxpayer, you would have gotten $1,200. If you're a married couple and gross combined income was up to $150,000, both of you would have gotten $1,200. So the government should have paid out to you $2,400. All right. As it relates to the dependents, if you have a dependent, you're claiming somebody on your tax return. If they are up to the age of 17, you should have gotten $500 per dependent. Right? Now, some people have 17-year-olds and didn't get the $500. Well, the criteria is they have to be up to the age of 17, right? So 16-year-olds would have gotten it. 17-year-olds, depending on their birthday, might not have got it. If you are claiming, if you're a grandparent, and just for reference, if you're a grandparent who is claiming one of your grandkids as a dependent on your returns, you would have also have gotten the $500 child credit for the stimulus payment as well. So sometimes I have grandparents asking me about that. I claim them. Do I get the $500 for them as well? Yes, you would have. All right. So a lot of people are asking, okay, great. This is fantastic. That held me over for a couple of weeks. It maybe paid some bills, maybe paid some rent that month. And now it's all gone. Or I put a little bit of it into savings and it's pretty much wiped out. That was very helpful in that month. Are we gonna potentially see another stimulus payment? The government has been sort of tossing this back and forth. Will we need another stimulus package to be voted on by the House, by the Senate, if this thing continues? And yes, they've been addressing that over the beginning of the summer here. Because if we go into the fall, Americans are going to still need continued help. They haven't passed anything yet, but that remains to be seen. Now, is the money that you receive taxable? No, it is not taxable. Okay, so this will not be added on to your taxable income, right? So amazingly, the government gave us money and they're not trying to take more of it back from us. So don't worry about that. They're not taxable. Jansen, you had a question?
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer it, but so our second daughter was born last July. So she's not 1 year old yet. And so she wasn't on our last tax return as a dependent. And so we did not get 500 for her. We got 500 from our first born. 500 short. And we don't quite know was that ever going to be honored, or is it because we did file for this. We finally filed about a month after April 14th.
Yeah. 15th. You said she was born in July.
Yeah.
Of 2019. Any baby in 2019 was not, unless you got your taxes in early, which we did not.
I see.
We did not get money for.
Okay, I will find the answer to that question for you because I don't know 100%. My initial gut reaction is that you would have to appeal that and you would have to go back to the government, to the IRS, and sort of explain that situation. But I want to find the exact process for you because I've only dealt on the other end of the spectrum in terms of age of, you know, dependents who are 16, 17, 18 years of age. But no, that's a very valid question because certainly children were being born throughout 2019 and may not have hit people's tax returns in terms of being a dependent. And I should have actually thought about that. So that's a really great question. I guess just personally in my mind, I was done having kids. So it wasn't even like a thing for me, right? But I will definitely find out for you guys. And I'll get you the answer to that through Christina.
And awesome. Ironically enough, Brian, I actually called the radio show, Jay Sekulow, the attorney who worked on that. I was on the radio asking that question, and at the time, I actually got on the air. He didn't even know the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I won't claim to know the answer, but I will find the answer.
If you can, thank you. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Because I don't want to give you wrong information. If I make an assumption, I would just rather find out. Because honestly, I have not dealt with a child who was born, didn't make it onto the tax return as a dependent. But certainly now that child is a cost to you. So if we can recoup the $500, benefit that you would receive for that child, I mean, it's totally worth it. So yeah, we'll find the answer to that. Okay, so thankfully the monies aren't taxable. Now, one of the things that they did under the CARES Act is they extended the tax filing deadline, right? So thankfully, while we were going through all this mess and we had a lot of things to be worrying about, taxes was one less thing. We didn't have to file by April 15th, right? So the tax deadline was extended from April into June, and then ultimately that got extended even further. So now taxes for 2019 are due July 15th, right? If you were going to owe the government, right, you did not need to start making payments or installment payments. You don't need to be doing that until July 15th. Now, if you already made a payment because you knew you were going to owe, you can't get that back. I mean, what's paid is paid. You can still file a tax extension, right? So normally if you need more time, you can file a form for an extension and they'll give you until October 15th of 2020 to file your 2019 tax returns. So they'll still do that. Even if you filed your taxes before this deadline, they're still processing refunds if you normally get a refund. So it's not like they're putting everything on hold until July 15th. So they are working through refunds. If you're having to submit additional paperwork because the IRS comes back to you and needs certain things, you can definitely be doing that. But we now have until July 15th. So that is a good thing. Questions about filing?
Yes.
April.
So I am the family bookkeeper and CPA.
Mm-hmm.
So we did file a little bit late. We owe taxes to the IRS from years prior. We're still from 2014, 2015. We're on a payment plan with them. Mm-hmm. That was automatically halted with the CARES Act.
Okay.
Even if we felt like we could continue paying, it just automatically was, and you had to call in to re-kick it in, which I did not. And do you happen to know that if we got a return, which we did get a return for 2019, like they owe us money now, does that just go to our tab of what we owe them, or do you know if they're typically, or are they paying that out?
Oh, yeah, I don't know for certain, but I don't really foresee the IRS like giving you it as a credit on what you previously owed. In terms of like sort of mixing what you owe versus what you're being refunded, I'm thinking they're going to want to keep that separate. So whatever your past installment plan was, those amounts will still be owed, and they would just issue you a refund, separate from that. It just seems to be like a potential tracking nightmare if you are trying to figure out, okay, what do they owe me in terms of my refund? How does that offset what I owe them? That could be a potential paper trail mess. So my assumption is that they're going to keep those two transactions sort of separate.
Okay.
And especially because they're in different tax years. You're going all the way back to 14 and 15 and 16. For what's being done in 2019, I think they're going to want to keep it separate.
Okay.
A big question that I get a lot too is, hey, now that I've been told by my employer that I can work from home, I can work remotely, can I claim my home as a home office on my taxes to get a tax break? The immediate answer is no. If you are a W-2 wage earner, you will not be able to claim working at home now, even under COVID, under that home office tax break. Now, if you are self-employed, if you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, you have an S Corp, however that's set up, and you have been working at home, maybe you've been taking deductions, small business deductions, you've been writing off your cell phone, you've been writing off mileage for your car. And maybe up until this point, you haven't really been writing off your home because there are certain rules which give you that tax break for working at home. They talk about square footage. They define what an actual home office means. Is it your primary place of business? Like, there's all this criteria. And so for those of you that your employer said, okay, now you can work from home, that's not going to constitute for the IRS having a home office. It won't meet the rules and the criteria. Now, if you want to get creative and you want to say, well, maybe there's some way for me to not be a W-2 wage earner anymore, and I'm going to be 1099 by my employer. I mean, then we're getting into different sort of categories of being self-employed. But yeah, if you've just been allowed to work from home, we're not going to be able to write off our home. Sorry.
I have a quick question with that.
Sure.
So I used to live the life where I used that math equation of finding the area of the square footage of my office. I never thought I'd use that math equation, but you do use it in real life. My question is, oh my gosh, I totally just lost my question. Dag nabbit.
I'll keep going. If it comes back, if it comes back, just bring it up.
Yes.
Anybody have student loan payments that they're still making?
Yeah.
Okay, let's address that real quickly in terms of student loans.
Okay.
So the CARES Act helped out with student loans. It temporarily suspends interest, payments, and collections on federal student loans. Notice I said federal, okay? So if you have private educational loans through a bank, through a credit card like Discover, a Discover educational loan, this doesn't necessarily apply to private loans because private loans and those lenders can do whatever they want. The CARES Act is as it relates to your federal student loans. So maybe you have subsidized, unsubsidized Stafford loans. Maybe there are Parent Plus loans involved, graduate loans, anything that's coming from the federal government. No interest, payments, or collection until September 30th of 2020. Now, at that time, they may revisit it and say, you know what, this thing is still going. We're going to kick that can down the road and give people even more time. But as it is right now, on federal loans, we have until September 30th of this year to have a suspension on interest, payments, and collections, okay? Now, some of us, because we've had all sorts of various loans, I have people come to me all the time going, I don't even know what I owe. I don't even know who the lenders are. I don't even know what I took out. One great place to go see all of your federal loans in one place is studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov. That will show you all of your federal loans through undergrad. Maybe you took some out in grad school. Whenever you took out those federal loans, the federal government definitely keeps tabs on them and knows how much you borrowed and when you borrowed and who is the current lender or processor for that loan, right? So studentaid.gov is where you can view those if you haven't seen them in a while and you were just like, man, ignorance is bliss. Like the best way to help yourself is to get those organized, see what you owe, right? And then we need to sort of be following this, because if they don't kick the can down the road and your interest begins accruing again in September, payments come back in September, we need to start budgeting that now. Because if you need to do something like claim economic hardship at that time, get a forbearance, as they call it, or a deferral, we need to start working on that now. A lot of times there's applications for that. There's forms to be filled out. You have to meet the eligibility. Maybe you need income-based repayment, or IBR, as they call it. Don't wait until September to get on that horse. Because if your student loan payments start back up again, that's going to be a major expense or cost that has been on pause. And I'm grateful for that, because my wife still has a ton of student loans and it's saving us a ton of money right now. But as soon as those kick in September, that's going to be a huge expense, right? What if I had wage garnishment? What if I had some troubles with my student loans? What if I was in default? What if I've been hassled by my student loan lenders and it's gone so far as having my wages garnished? Okay. They have put a moratorium on wage garnishment collections till September 30th as well. Okay. So if you're still getting stuff taken from a paycheck for student loan payments from the federal government, that should not be happening. Okay. So maybe just have your eyes on that if that was a situation for you in the past, just to make sure that you're getting as much of your income as possible. Okay. A lot of times people ask me too, how is this all going to impact my credit score? Will this negatively impact if I'm not making payments? Payments have been on pause during this time. It will not negatively impact your credit score. Okay. I think at the moment, that's all I sort of want to touch on in terms of student loans, unless somebody has a specific question. Okay, let's go to unemployment, because there's a ton going on here. Just in the first 4 weeks alone, 22 million Americans claimed and filed for unemployment, right? And now we're over 40 million claims on file. That's not 40 million receiving benefits, but 40 million claims as of now. I mean, it's unheard of. That's why the system's backlogged and clogged up. That's why you may have a claim in or a file in with EDD and you still haven't received payments yet. They're trying to process all of this stuff. You can't talk to a human being without wasting hours of your life. So it's not an easy process, right? We know we have to apply through the state, through EDD. That's how we in California get this, right? And just as a reminder, in the state of California, California provides up to 26 weeks of unemployment benefit, up to $450 a week for those 26 weeks, depending on what you've put into the system during your work life, right? So maximum is $450 a week. You get 26 weeks of benefit. Now, the CARES Act, the federal government said, we'll provide additional unemployment insurance or benefit, as they call it, at $600 additional per week. So you could be getting $450 from the state and you can be getting $600 from the federal government, right? That's why it's been so pressing for people who have lost jobs, who have been furloughed, who have been given partial hours to be claiming, because for many, we can actually be getting more in benefit than we could be earning from our W-2 job. And that's why it created this immense rush, right? So the CARES Act added $600 additional per week for up to an additional 13 weeks of benefit, right? So people just dove right in to try to get this. Now, under normal circumstances, the only way you can claim unemployment is if you've been severed from employment, you've been fired, you've been let go, right, by your employer, right? But now, under the CARES Act, if you quit your job due to coronavirus, you had to care for a spouse, you had to care for a child, something related to COVID, you can quit your job, not be terminated, but quit yourself and still file and receive unemployment. Okay, so they're protecting you because of the situation. If you are self-employed, right? That was one of the big questions early on. What about those people who are self-employed? They've always been working from home, but now COVID is affecting projects, transactions, getting out there and doing your self-employed business, and income is not coming in. That was a huge thing. And initially they were like, well, it's going to be really difficult for self-employed to file and get a benefit. Well, now they're protecting that as well. So self-employed can receive up to 39 weeks, right? That 26 plus 13, right? 39 weeks of benefit. Now, when you do the application through EDD, you're going to have to answer the questions correctly. That's a part of that process too, because one wrong move and your application can be delayed. It can be, denied. You'd have to appeal. I mean, it restarts the process, right? But yes, if you're self-employed, you can claim for 39 weeks, okay? If you are only working partial hours, CARES Act also covers you, right? If your hours, say, went from 40 a week and now you're only working 12, you can still check with EDD and see if you can file a claim, even if your hours were simply reduced, right? So that's nice as well. What if, Bryan, I was unemployed before COVID, before March, right? Unemployment will pay retroactively back to January 27th, right? So if in February you lost your job, you were going through the process of filing for unemployment, you were looking for work, you had no idea COVID was going to become this thing, and then March 13 rolls around, and then we sort of go under shelter in place and so on, you can still file and get retroactive, right? Back to January 27th, okay? Now, I've had some people ask me, Bryan, what if I'm furloughed? Like, I haven't been terminated, I haven't been let go, but I've been furloughed. Meaning, okay, they're keeping my position. I may or may not have it when this is all over, but they're not paying me, but technically I have a job. Yes, you can file for unemployment, okay? And I would say, if you are rejected, your claim was rejected, it's gonna be a bear, but I would appeal.
Yeah, for sure.
I would appeal for sure. It's such a relief, it's such a help that, there is a backlog, but I think like we got to do it. We just got to do it. Christina, anything you want to add to like what I've touched on that you've experienced?
I didn't hear, were you talking to me?
Yes.
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry, Bryan.
I think
I was talking.
No, it's okay. I was just saying, is there anything that you wanted to touch on with unemployment that you've experienced with people through the process?
I mean, you really did cover it all. I know that Jansen and April initially had that question. I'm happy that I actually provided the right answer, that they would, give it to him retroactively, because when he had applied, it wasn't necessarily for COVID at first. But I think just the biggest frustration is just not being able to actually get a hold of them, and their online application isn't exactly easy. I know myself, like my boyfriend, he's been going through it. I don't even know how many weeks now it's been since he's even heard from them, and they'll say, oh, we got your request, or oh, we got yours. So he's yet to see a dime, and he's self-employed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really is a waiting game. I know actually several people in one of my groups that they literally got up at 8 or 7:45 in the morning and just called like 100 times, just like waiting and waiting, would just hang up and keep calling back until they got someone. And once they did, I have to honestly say, at least it's been their experience, they were super helpful. Mm-hmm. And almost every single one of them got everything was retroactive for them. And like they got their checks almost instantly. So,
oh, that's good.
I guess be a little bit patient.
Yeah. And I've heard the nightmare stories though, too, of people calling in, finally getting a human being. And then basically that human being just saying sort of what you're needing is like above my job title as their sort of default answer to like, I don't want to take the time to help you. Right. And there's nothing I can do. It's above my pay grade. And they sort of get dead-ended. So that's really good that in most cases, though, you are like moving forward.
And I had given April and Jansen, Verdugo Job Center is a really great resource for things like this. They have someone, they can't answer specific questions of your case necessarily, but you can present them with different situations. And they are really informative in being able to help. And there's someone there. They're not actually in office right now, but they have like a hotline, mm-hmm. and they'll like assign you a caseworker, and yeah. So that's actually the number. It's Verdugo's Job Center.
Yeah. Did you guys actually file and start receiving monies yet, or are you still waiting?
Yeah, I sent Christina a long email because it's kind of a bizarre situation. I had filed really quickly. I was trying to be proactive when my employer insinuated that we were going to be laid off, which was before CARES Act passed.
Yeah.
And I filed and it was accepted. And then like 3 days later, I found out due to CARES Act, they were going to keep me on for 8 weeks. So then I tried to contact them to cancel it, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody, and I couldn't. The only way to cancel it is to get a hold of them.
Yeah.
And so they started paying me my benefits, even though I was making a full wage. So I never touched the money. It's still on the debit card. I never touched it.
Okay.
But now I am laid off and I need the money, and my account has been frozen because I never certified weeks.
Oh, so you have to restart the claim again.
Reopen it. So I've applied to reopen, and they got that application, but I haven't heard back from them. It was just yesterday that I found that out. So
that's also the key part too, because it specifically says like if you go ahead and you certify for those benefits, that's it. Like your claim is it's going through. Like you can't like stop it once you've already done the like you're issued them. But then if you read it in like a different section of the site, it'll tell you that you can reopen your claim. You just have to notify them or send something in. So it's the language on there isn't exactly easy to understand or read, in my opinion.
Yeah. Wow.
So our stimulus check is hardly touched. We hardly touched it. We just put it in our savings. So we're living off of that right now. And I just hope that this gets sorted out before that runs out.
Or before our rent is due.
Right. Right. And
I have 6 weeks of payments on a card. I'm afraid to use it because I'm sure they're going to want it back, or I don't know how they're going to put that out.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah. And Christina, do you know how it works in terms of Family Promise or BHC during this time? Maybe April and Jansen, like, have they, in terms of rent, have they?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have sent us a letter that if we need help to simply submit a form, but we have been paying our rent. And so we have yet to do that service. We know that it's available. So if we have to, we can do that.
Yeah. And while that's good, I also, for anything that we pause, I also fear the other side of it, which is the downside of then owing these big lump sums on bills that we haven't been paying, You know what, you guys, as much as I was trying to be swift, we're going to run out of time. So I'm just going to end right now. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't want it to cut off mid-sentence.
Okay. Thanks, Bryan.
All right.